if you are in a cut, if you are cutting your calories, I think it's a really important thing to be mindful of your macros. Your macros, macronutrients, right? That's your protein, carbohydrates, and fats. I think it's a really common mistake for people to kind of get their macro balance off, especially when they're cutting calories, because you focus so much on protein. But one thing that can happen is you might go a little bit too low on your carbohydrates. A lot of people think like, oh, I need to cut carbs, right? But there is a certain amount of carbohydrates that your body needs for functioning, especially if you are doing like high volume training, if you're doing muscle building, if you are training for like long periods of time. Carbohydrates are the main fuel for your muscles. And if you're not getting enough carbohydrates, even if you're hitting your calorie intake, if you're not eating the right amount of carbohydrates, you could be putting your body into ketosis, which is when your body switches from getting its fuel primarily from carbohydrates to burning fat. And ketosis is a really shitty feeling. It's like hitting a wall, you know? So like, for example, when you probably hear like runners talk about hitting a wall when they're doing long distance runs. They're like running for a long extended period of time. They hit that wall. Usually that wall is when their body has kind of run out of carbohydrates or glucose in the blood, glycogen in the muscles. That's how sugar is stored in our bodies. They run out of that supply, and then their body has to shift from burning glucose to burning fat and breaking down muscle and protein to get energy. And it feels terrible. It's like, I don't even know how to describe it. It feels just, if you've ever hit the wall, you know what it's like. Thank you for the sub. You're such a sweetie pie. So if you are like undershooting, like chronically undershooting, if you're chronically undershooting your carbohydrates, you're probably going to be hitting that wall often throughout your day, where you're going to be like hitting that point where your body is no longer doesn't have the fuel that it needs. And you might also experience this as symptoms of mental health problems, like feeling anxious, feeling depressed, lots of fatigue, feeling very low motivation for your workouts, having trouble getting through your entire workout. These all can be symptoms of not eating enough carbohydrates. So I wanted to just kind of set a reminder for people. If you are, reducing your calories, especially, you need to make sure that you're mindful of your macros. Remember that the IOM, the Institute of Medicine, their recommendations are that at least 45% of your daily calories comes from carbohydrates. Okay, mostly complex carbohydrates. So 45% is the minimum. They recommend between 45 and 65%. If you're not hitting that minimum, you're going to be experiencing a lot of, you're going to feel like shit. You're going to feel like shit. So make sure that, you're paying attention to your macros beyond protein if you start to feel, those symptoms, right? Where you're feeling really low motivated, feeling really fatigued and tired all the time, feeling like you need to deload really, really often. If you're not tracking your actual full macros or how many carbohydrates that you're eating, you might want to look at that. Because it's hard enough being in a cut, right? Being in a low calorie intake, being in a calorie deficit is hard enough on your body. Even if you're eating the right distribution of even if you're eating the right distribution of macronutrients like carbohydrates, fats, and protein, it's still going to be hard on your body. But if in addition to that, you're also not fueling your body with the right amount of carbohydrates, then you're just going to make it 5 million times worse for yourself. Also with protein too. If you're not eating enough protein, you're going to make it a lot harder for yourself. So just remember that your body's primary source of fuel is carbohydrates. That's the source of fuel that your muscles burn when you're working out, especially when you're doing cardio or high volume training, working out for a long period of time. And glucose is the only fuel that your brain uses. So going no carbs for your diet or eating a super, super low amount of carbs is actually not good for you, okay? So 45 to 65% of your daily calories really should be coming from carbohydrates. If you're doing a keto diet, you're still gonna need to eat some carbohydrates. The distribution on that is a little bit different. I don't often prescribe the keto diet, which is like a super low carbohydrate, high fat intake diet. It was created specifically for people with epilepsy. But even then, there's a minimum amount of carbohydrates that you need to eat every day. So even if you're on the keto diet, I need to remind myself with the keto carb percentage. 5 to 10% carbohydrates. Yeah, so with a keto diet, the distribution is like 5 to 10% of your calories are coming from carbohydrates. But people who do the keto diet, they eat that consistently, right? And they go through that wall and they spend probably like a week or so feeling really shitty. A lot of people feel like they get the flu and they feel really bad. You just want to be super, super careful with that, because when your blood sugar is too low, you can have essentially a diabetes attack, right? So, just make sure that you're mindful of your carb intake. Carbs are not bad guys. We need them in the right amount. And the minimum amount is 45% of your daily calories. For men, that's like 225 grams per day minimum. For women, or what is that? What is it? The 2,000 calorie diet is about, hold on. If you're eating a 2,000 calorie diet, if you're eating a 2,000 calorie diet, that's a minimum of 225 grams of carbohydrates per day. If you're eating a 2,500 calorie diet, then that's a minimum of 281 grams per day, okay? So be very, very mindful of your carbohydrates if you're experiencing those types of symptoms that we're talking about. You think keto is when you unlock a door with a That is such a weird pun. I'll give it to you. I'm not going to quite throw a tomato at you, but I feel like you need I feel like that's tomato territory. We're getting into tomato territory. We're in the tomato hinterlands.